Shivers, The Enchanted Attic by M.D. Spencer, Chapter 9. Everything closed in on Nicole. The walls, the voices, the fear, everything. She crouched at the top of the narrow staircase like a frightened rabbit, not sure which way to run. She was totally in the dark, but for the narrow beam of the flashlight, which quivered now as her hand shook in fright. Voices were murmuring in front of them, beyond the door. Another voice could be heard behind them, in the direction from which they had come. There was no escape, no way out. The voice behind them grew a little louder.
Nicole!
It called. Whose voice was it, and how did it know her name? And a little louder.
Nicole!
Nicole clutched Casey's arm. "Don't move," she breathed. She squeezed her sister's arm so tight it hurt.
Nicole! Casey! Where are you? It's
"Time for lunch." Casey spoke to Nicole very slowly and deliberately, as if she were speaking to a 3-year-old. "If you would please let go of my arm," she said. "That happens to be our mom." The kitchen looked practically like new. Well, not quite like new. That would take white Formica countertops, fresh cabinets, new sinks, and even a new floor. Mom always said she loved hardwood floors, but this one was a bunch of splinters. Not something you'd want to walk on barefoot. Still, the kitchen was spick and span. Actually, it looked good, considering how old it was. There were no more cobwebs in the sinks. The walls had been cleaned. The counters had been scrubbed. Even the splinters on the floor looked clean. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, which were now so clean you could barely see they were there. The whole place looked a lot brighter and a lot less sinister than it had when Nicole had first seen it. It looked almost fit for ordinary human beings to live in. The girls arrived in the kitchen quite out of breath and looking very strange, and not very much like ordinary human beings. Casey's hands and feet were still muddy from exploring the stream, but that wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the dust on their faces and the huge number of cobwebs hanging from their hair and clinging to their clothes. For a moment, the two girls just stood there panting, their faces full of spider webs, their eyes as round as saucers. And for a moment, from across the kitchen, their parents stood looking at them with their mouths open, and their eyes as round as saucers. No one said a word. The two grown-ups and the two children just stood staring at each other. Finally, their father spoke. "Been playing, have you?" he asked. Yeah," said Nicole. "Playing, right." "Playing where?" their mother demanded. "Look at you." Nicole wondered how she could look at herself without a mirror, but she decided this would not be a good time to ask. Besides, she could look at Casey, and that gave her a pretty good idea of how she looked herself. Ridiculous. Nicole looked at her sister, who was wide-eyed and covered with dirt and cobwebs, and she felt herself start to smile. Suddenly, relief swept over her. She had been incredibly tense from having braved the passageway, and the cobwebs, and the narrow stairs, and wondering about the voices, which were probably boards creaking. Now she was safe. She could breathe again, and her sister looked absurd. The corners of Nicole's mouth turned up more and more, and she started to laugh. She covered her mouth with her hand and tried not to look at Casey. But a second later, she heard Casey start to laugh, and she couldn't hold it in any longer. She burst out laughing, and Casey burst out laughing too. Their mother burst out yelling. "I don't see what's so funny about being dirty," she said. "I want both of you to take a shower before you eat lunch, and get out of my nice, clean kitchen. Now!" The two girls turned and ran from the kitchen almost doubled over, with tears of laughter streaming down their cheeks.